Hello everybody, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Tarot de Marseille on Earth. So this is a series where I'm bringing you along with me as I learn the Tarot de Marseille with Tom Benjamin's book Tarot on Earth. This is a really practical sort of earthy approach to Marseille, and I'm really seeing just how much that's true as I move through this book. So if you're playing along with me, then we are on week 9, I think. It'll be correct in the description box down below. But this past week we were working on the lesson 6, so we're just starting to dive into, let me pull open my page here. We're just starting to dive into the quartz. I thought I was going to be all slick and like just flip up the page all fancy like, but here we go. So lesson 6, the quartz. I have got to admit that getting into this section and out of the pips was actually kind of like a bummer in a way. I think I was really enjoying diving into the pips, and I think the pips was the thing that I was most excited about this book. So as soon as we moved away from the pips, I was like, but I don't wanna. And I definitely procrastinated a bit when I got into this section. So I'm really interested to hear what your experiences have been over the past week, and I do hope you'll leave a comment down below and just let me know, how did you fare with the first couple of lessons, or rather activities, in this section? I'll tell you a little bit about my experience, but I definitely want to hear yours as well, because this was where it started to get a little sticky for me. So getting into the quartz, Tom and I had a little divergence. So the thing is, what I realized when I was in the pips is that I was really struggling, and I talked about this last week's video, or the last video. I talked about the fact that I don't typically read with reversals, and I was feeling a little bit stuck with the pips and how to read shadow versus light when it seemed like this was a very like what you see is what you get reading style that Tom talks about here. And there was a bit here about, do I reverse? And if I reverse, how do I even tell that the cards are reversed? Like, I think I showed some examples last week, but with the Marshmallow Marseille, which is the deck that I've been primarily using for this, I haven't switched decks yet, and I'm probably not going to through this series, but I do have a couple of other pip decks I can play with. But like a card like this, the 2 of coins, like how do you tell if it's reversed? Now, somebody cleverly pointed out that on the back, that little marshmallow symbol right in the very center, it's teeny tiny. God, I love those rainbows. Anyways, teeny tiny, you can see that the marshmallow in this image is upright by the little teeny oblong circle on the very, very top. I'll bring it in real close. See that? So you can always flip it over and see if it's upright. I am way too freaking lazy for that. And to be honest, this was the section of the book where I started to really miss the intuitive way that I typically work with the tarot. So, and there is a section, have we done it already? I'm a little bit ahead at this point. Oh, who am I fooling? I'm totally all the way through this. I'm totally all the way through this, and I'm bringing you along section by section, but there's a section in here where he talks about intuition. I think it's actually coming up, so I won't speak to that just yet, but I will say that for me, Tom's approach to the tarot is very methodical and earthy, which, hello, that's what the book is called, so not surprised there, but definitely where reversals are concerned, I wasn't feeling it. I'm used to feeling out light or shadow based on context, based on card position, based on the question, all that kind of stuff. So when I got into quartz, one of the things that he talks about in this section is he talks about the idea that you have to kind of set up, you don't have to, let me rephrase, he doesn't say that. It's useful to set up how you're going to work with the quartz. Like, are you going to have rules? If they're upright versus reverse, does it mean that it's an aspect of you, or rather the querent, or an aspect of somebody in the querent's life? Like, how are you going to know how the quartz play? And he very smartly speaks to the idea that sometimes our issues with the quartz is that we don't, and the fact that they feel really ambiguous is because we don't set up hard and fast rules. And I kind of have to agree with him a little bit on that point, but I will say it's just not my reading style. So I did go into this section with a good amount of sort of personal skepticism and how this was going to fit with my reading style, but I did actually find it extremely useful. He has a section here on starting from scratch with the quartz, which is our activity 6.1, and in that section he asks you to kind of define the court for each, like what a court is, like, or not court, but what a page is, what a knight is, what a queen is, and what a king is, both like how you would define that and then how you would apply that to modern life. And I do write right in my book, and I found that section actually pretty useful because in all of my years reading tarot, I've never really thought about what was a page's role, what was a knight's role or a queen's role or a king's role, at least not in a very deliberate way. And this had me doing that. I literally looked at Wikipedia articles and things on the internet about like what was a page doing, what was the queen's job, and different types of queens. Like there's queen regent who was sort of in charge, or there's like the queen consort who was just the sort of spouse of the king, and all these different roles. I did find that exercise actually really useful, so I really liked that. But the most fun, I have to say, that I had in this section was in applying all of that in the same way we did the pips to the different elements. And you'll have to forgive, my handwriting is literally the worst. That's one of my goals for 2019, is to improve my handwriting. But it's scrawl, it's a mess, you're not going to be able to read anything. But basically, I was able to sort of distill in a similar way to how I distilled my pips, my minors. I was able to sort of distill what I think the quartz mean to me. And that was really useful because I found going through that I'm more comfortable with the quartz than I think I gave myself credit for. So that was a really useful activity. And I think that was, I think that kind of helped me get over some initial sort of skepticism about this particular section of this book. So that was what we worked on this week. Coming up for the next week, before we have our next video, or I have my next video, whatever, that I share with you guys, we are going to be working on lesson 6.3, which is about defining who's who in the court. And that looks like a really fun exercise. And I know it is because I'm already ahead, which I will talk about in the next video. And then 6.4 is court in the act. And this is where you actually get out your deck, similarly to what we've done in the previous lessons with the minors, and you start doing some practice readings with those cards. So I'm going to leave it there for now. That is what you're going to be working on for the next week. Remember that this series isn't going anywhere. You don't have to be pacing along with me. And probably now that we're out of the minors, the next, I'm going to probably have quite a bit assigned in each week's section so that we can get through the rest of this book. But you can like pause, like you don't have to watch these live as they come out on YouTube. You can watch this 6 months from now and just pick up where you left off. Or if you're starting to this series and you've jumped in a couple years from now or whatever on these videos, you just move at your own pace. But once you've completed the rest of chapter 6 and read this chapter called Interlude on Intuition, read that, and then by then, hopefully my next video will be up, or if you're watching this later, you can just then move on to the next video. So that is it for this time. I will see you all again next week. Talk to you later, guys. Bye!